Well, good evening, everybody. This is Dr. Mulder, and I have with me one of my closest friends, the one, the only, Joshua P. Warren. How the heck are you doing, brother?
I'm doing really well and excited to be here on your show. This is the first time I think you've ever interviewed me, so this is a relaxing experience for me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I think I was on another show with somebody else, and I think we interviewed you, but it was more or less it's the first solo one-on-one.
Yeah,
And well, I'll tell you the reason why I wanted to get you on the show, and I appreciate it, number one, because I know you're a busy guy just like I am, and trying to find time to do these things, you can just, it's just at random. But apparently, you were on Coast to Coast, I guess a week or 2 weeks ago, or whatever, and you mentioned something about the Apex machine. And I, honestly, Josh, I mean, I'm so damn busy. I didn't even catch the show. And I know you sent me the link, but I just never got. It's one of those things I just hadn't gotten to yet. And I didn't realize that you had promoted the machine until I started getting orders for Apex machines. I'm going like, well, what is going on here with this sudden, boost in sales here? I mean, it always did great. It's a great model, but then again, for whatever reason, it just people wanted this machine, and what reason why I love this machine is because you and I got together, we collaborated, and we made something entirely new, something that's never been made before. And I put my mojo into it, you put your mojo into it, and as a result of that, we have the Apex machine. Now, uh, Josh, I'm just a radionics guy. You gave me a task here. You said, how can we make this work? And I had to come up with taking your ideas and making them viable and making them fit on a platform, where all the parts would fit and it was looked reasonably ergonomically. It looked pretty pleasing, and make everything work. But my question to you, this is the one I keep getting from other people: why did we have an Orgon accumulator, which is what I call it, on the input, and why do we have a Herkimer diamond on the output, which is also a mirror? Could you please tell the audience why we went that route?
yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, it was earlier this year, 2023, when we got on the telephone and started talking about everything that we've learned over these past, I don't know, 15 years or whatever that you and I have been friends and have been working on projects, and how we could turn that into what I would envision as the ultimate form of wishing machine.
Mm-hmm.
And I have always believed that there's a connection between orgon and radionics. I'm about to explain that in a moment. And so I was telling you, boy, an orgon accumulator would actually be the perfect type of input plate. And then I also said, I think a mirror would be a great output plate because mirrors reflect light, and then a Herkimer diamond provides a very particular role when it comes to what they call transduction. So we'll
Okay.
get to all that, but let's start with orgon. Um, Wilhelm Reich was a psychologist, psychoanalyst, an MD who was born in Austria in the late 1800s. And he was very controversial, and he started becoming really interested in the human bioenergy field, what ancients might call chi or ki or prana. And as an MD, he was very interested in the concept of the orgasm, which is, of course, what often produces life.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so he started calling this type of energy orgon. It literally has its roots. It shares the root with the word orgasm, but it's all about bioenergy. And because he had also some background with electrical stuff, I think he was interested in what anybody who's an electrical technician would identify as a capacitor or a condenser. And basically, a condenser or a capacitor is something like a container that has multiple layers of conducting and non-conducting materials. So, for example, you could have layers of glass and aluminum foil, and that would be a very basic type of capacitor. And when you use a capacitor in an electrical circuit, it stores up small electrical charges over a period of time, and then it releases them in a big burst. So I think he was wondering if something similar to a capacitor, an electrical capacitor, could be produced that would do the same thing with this bioenergy, this orgon.
Right.
And what he came up with was this sort of design, which instead of having alternating layers of conductors and non-conductors, he had alternating layers of organic and inorganic material.
Mhm.
So, for example, when I did one of my conferences here in Las Vegas, you've been to both of them. One of them was Finding Your Magic 2. I did a whole presentation about Orgon, and everybody got a gift bag. And one of the things in the gift bag was this tiny little Orgon accumulator that my wife Lauren and I put together just for the attendees as a little freebie. And
Right.
all this is, it's a little glass vial, and it has alternating cotton, which is organic, and still wool layers, which is inorganic. So still wool is inorganic, cotton is organic. And so this would be the most basic form of an orgon accumulator. So the idea is that when you're around these accumulators, they're storing up bioenergy all the time to be released when necessary. This is especially interesting when you start applying it to weather manipulation, because there's a big connection between the human mind and weather phenomena. And I think it's because the weather is often moisture based and the human body is primarily water and empty space. But we share this orgon energy that can be, again, sort of experimented with using these little accumulators. And in fact, I have a product that I'm working on right now that should be out later this year, probably around October, that includes a very advanced orgon accumulator. But here is my Apex machine.
Yes.
And it's not plugged in. I don't have a plug available right here next to me, so the plug is in the other room. But of course, the only difference is when it's plugged in, you can see a little red light blinking here. Actually, it doesn't blink. It just stays solid, doesn't it? We have some that
Yeah.
blink. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this right here is an orgon accumulator that we discussed. I told you my ideas about how it should be constructed. And so this is actually sitting there all the time, theoretically, acting as a passive orgon battery. So it's always storing up bioenergy fields. And what we know about radionics is that we ultimately consider these things to be mind machines. You're powering them with your mind. That's why if you give a radionics machine to somebody who doesn't know how to use it, it probably isn't going to work for that person. They have to have a certain understanding of what they're doing. These are mind-powered machines, and the mind and the bioenergy are all connected to these concepts of orgon and radionics. So by combining these two, we're creating an input plate that's more than just some kind of a metal plate that's used to take what energy you put into it electrically. It's also sitting there and acting as a booster, theoretically, because it's adding bioenergy to the bioenergy that you're giving it. And it's constantly drawing in more energy. So after you set your specimen or your sample on the witness plate, after you do that, it's still continuing to draw in orgon energy as if you were sitting there staring at it, focusing on it, even though you're not there. So that's what makes this such a powerful input plate. Now, of course, it's great that it goes through these 12 different dials so that you can get very specific with tuning it. Eventually, the output plate here is a mirror, which, as I said, is great because with a mirror, well, we're talking about something that's automatically reflecting outward, and that's what we want the output plate to do, to reflect outward. But the Herkimer diamond has always been incredibly powerful when it comes to manifestation work, and that's because a Herkimer diamond is a rare type of quartz that is found naturally with two pointed ends. So this is what is called double terminated. And to give you an idea of why this is so important, for one thing, quartz is known as a natural transducer. So what that means is it's able to take some kind of energy like electricity and transform it into a vibration, or it can take a vibration and transform it into electricity. via the piezoelectric effect. So, for example, if you take something like one of these quartz crystals and you put some stress on it, you can shoot a spark out of it. That's used in lighters and similar devices all the time. Or, of course, you can electrify quartz and get it to resonate at a consistent pace, and now you can use it for timing devices and watches and whatnot. Crystals are really the basis of all modern technology. Computer chips, Silicon Valley, we're all talking about crystals here. Crystals take energy from one form and they turn it into another form. So that's exactly how, like, say, an old crystal radio would work. Back in the old days, most kids had a crystal radio. You had a crystal of some kind in there, you had a coil around it, you'd put a little earpiece in, and you could hear radio stations even though it wasn't plugged into a battery or any other power source, because the crystal sits there and it naturally is able to act as one of these transducers. So when I take something like one of these double terminated Herkimer diamonds, which is named, by the way, after Herkimer County in New York State, which is where most of them have been found. If I take one of these Herkimer diamonds and I put it on a Van de Graaff electrostatic generator, which is like one of those balls that you put your hands on and makes your hair stand up, and I turn out the lights, you will see electricity shooting, spraying like a huge cone of light out of each end of this Herkimer diamond. So what that means is you're not only putting more energy into this device because of this Orgon accumulator input plate, but what's coming out is theoretically being transmitted as if it is literally being blasted out like electrical, like lightning bolts from both sides of this Herkimer diamond. And you combine all that with the mirror, and it just produces a very well-balanced design. I specifically said I thought we should use circles on this because anytime you have squares or rectangles, you've got corners. And traditionally, energy leaks off of corners. And that's why when you have, going back to electrical theory, you have something like a Van de Graaff generator, which has a dome on top, because that dome or that ball actually acts as a natural shape for capacitance. And so we're preventing leakage by having circular designs instead of corners. Now, of course, a lot of people comment on this little symbol that we have right here in the middle. And I knew that we needed a powerful magical symbol, something that had to do with sacred geometry, and I wasn't sure what it should be, so I had to think about it for a while and do some research. And I finally settled upon this. This is called the Yarma, or I'm sorry, it's the yantra. That's what it's called. This is called the yantra for Metatron. Metatron, according to many religious texts in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, is considered one of the highest, if not the highest, of angels. And the role of Metatron is to combine the spiritual world with the physical world in harmony. And so this particular design, which is based on the yantra interpretation, which comes from sacred geometry, is supposed to represent the energies of the spirit world and the physical world flowing together in balanced harmony. And so therefore, by using this almost like a sigil to invoke that mindset, we're tying together the input and the output plate, because ultimately a radionics machine is providing some form of justice in the environment. We know that energy can be neither created nor destroyed, simply conserved and transferred from one form to another. And that's one of the great things about these. This is a tool that allows you to rebalance forces. If something is going on in your life that's wrong, then it just needs to be rebalanced. That's why we always tell people, don't go out trying to use these maliciously, because depending on your goals, and you're going to make something bad happen to yourself, you know. Right. But I always tell people, as long as you put nothing but goodness and positivity into the machine, it is only capable of producing goodness and positivity. So there's nothing to be afraid of. It's not like the monkey's paw or some kind of leprechaun gold that you find, and there's always a catch and there's always some unseen price to pay. Exactly. And so ultimately, so this device, along with the special goodies that you put inside of it, is amazing because it's got the electrical power boost, and it also has two input plates and two output plates. So that if you are a true experimenter and you really want to start plugging in different types of items or tools or crystals or whatever, wands, whatever you want to play with, this is your one-stop shop. And we wanted it to look different. We discussed the aesthetics of it, and it not only looks different, but it is different. This is a special machine. I feel a very personal connection to this machine and this design. And I also think, Brad, that after all these years that we've known each other, this is a great homage to our work and our friendship.
I agree. I agree. I tell you, Joshua, I remember, I remember the very first time I heard you. I think it was on Coast to Coast. You were with George Norrie, and you. And what caught me was that you were from Asheville, and it just so happened I was within a reasonable driving distance of Asheville. I think like maybe an hour, hour and a half, something along that line. And I thought, all right, very, this is interesting. And then I was trying to contact you to get some information on a science project I was working on with a buddy of mine, and I think you turned me on to Mobius. I didn't even know who Mobius was at the time,
Yeah.
and and he turned me on to somebody else who I finally wound up at the research center out of Texas for Hal Puthoff, which is I guess one of the the top. And what it was a free energy or point energy, and what we're looking at basically was I had to go to a PhD. Somebody actually wrote a paper on it. I think out of Alabama. It was called the capacitor paradox, and but it gives you the feeling that you're getting more out of a system than what you're putting into it. But it's anyway. Besides the point, it got me to that. That's how, and then somehow or another, I got on your mailing list, and you had this thing where you were going to do the wishing machine webinar. That night changed my life forever. It was and literally, and you were in Asheville, so this is the case. It was cold, it was snowy, no reason to be outside. It's just a good night to kind of be cozy, have a nice beverage, and watch this guy, this Joshua P. Warren character that I've heard about on Coast to Coast, tell me about this wishing machine. And you went through about an hour and a half or 2 hours going through this thing from what you believed it was to what you had an actual wishing machine that you had purchased years earlier, and you were talking about it, and you open it up and you let everybody see the thing. I don't, that's not the technology I use, but I thought it was interesting, this particular setup. And I'm going to tell you that show changed my life forever because you talked about our mutual friend Charles Cosimano. This guy is a rascal. Everybody, I'm going to be right up front with you, and Josh will verify this. He is a pain in the ass, but he is our pain in the ass. Am I right or am I wrong?
About which part? No, he talk about a wicked sense of humor. I mean, one of the things that I always attracted me to Charles Cosimano was that he is just an excellent writer. I mean, when you are reading his work, you feel like he's sitting there in the room next to you talking to you, and that's before you've ever met the guy or seen him or even heard his voice. And but he's always talking about doing mischievous things with radionics.
Right.
And I always thought he was just doing that to be funny, but then I met him and I was like, this guy really is doing some mischievous things with
Yes, he is.
radionics.
Yes, he is. Yeah, yeah. I tell you, I remember that day. I think it was in December. I had to go through a blizzard, literally a blizzard. Nope, I'm not understating this. Out of Asheville in my four-wheel drive Jeep to get to, of all places, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I guess I had got there earlier than day, and I had to pick you up at the airport, and we had a few cocktails, and I think the following day you got to drive by Dahmer's house. That was interesting. And I took pictures of that and sent that to my daughter, and she was really impressed. She loves that kind of stuff. And but no, we got to meet Charles Cosimano, and he's an interesting character. Also, we got to meet Tom Verloc, and we did what was the 10 finest minutes of cinema ever put together by man. What was the Wishmasters? Is that
Wishmasters, yeah, which is available on YouTube. Just type in Wishmasters and either of our names and or radionics. I don't know how, but I think if you go to wishmastersmovie.com, it'll take you directly there. But yeah, it's a short film and we shot it all in one evening. And you know what? That trip, I loved that experience so much that if I could go back and just relive that exact trip all over again, I would do it. I
yeah,
mean, because you and I were like kids in the candy shop with these other radionic like-minded kind of enthusiasts, and we're sitting there showing off each other's toys. And then in addition to making the video, which was a lot of work, we were pretty much up all night making that. And
right.
then you and I, yeah, we got out and we just enjoyed that area around Milwaukee. If whether we were looking at old serial killer stomping grounds, or gambling, or having some of the best beer in the world, and some pretty darn good food. I mean, that was just a
Yeah,
great fun time. And I think that it's probably a shame that we didn't just keep a camera rolling the whole time, and we could have made a documentary out of that whole trip.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And you know, I, I you know, I as of right now, and this is just a little side note here. We Chuck had a heart attack. I think it was last year, and then he was out of commission for a good while. And I, I was able to talk to him on another gentleman's show, and he's just we just kind of got back together and started talking and what have you, um, and then I even did a couple of interviews with him on my channel, or a couple of interviews back. I guess it was like the beginning of this year or the last part of last year, and he had suffered a stroke, and it is just you could tell that it was starting to take a toll on him, and then apparently he suffered a second stroke, and as of right now, I have no clue how to get a hold of him. I mean, I used to talk to
Yeah.
that guy once a week.
It's
Say,
funny because people email me I've gotten 2 or 3 emails over the past month from people saying, "Do you know anything about what's happened to Charles Cosimano?" And nobody seems to know anything. So if anybody does know something, please contact one of us, right, Brad? And
yeah,
let
yeah,
us know.
find out his status. Yeah,
Yeah, because I mean, for one thing, he was a very private man in many ways, regardless. He wasn't always out there posting every single day and kind of telling you what he was up to. He would pop in once in a while. Um, I know that both he and his wife were having medical problems. But I haven't seen any updates on his Facebook page or his website, and nobody else that I know knows him has any idea what's going on. So we're all definitely concerned.
yeah. Well, yeah, I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention because
Yeah.
the thing about it is because of Charles Cosimano, you learned about radionics.
Hmm.
It's because of that night on your webinar when you mentioned Charles Cosimano's name and you mentioned the book Elementary Psionics and how you read that book. I guess were you working at a bookstore or something when you were a teenager and you saw
Yeah.
the book? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when I was 16, my first real job was working as a clerk at B. Dalton Bookseller at the Asheville Mall in North Carolina. And I was in charge of special orders, which I
Mhm.
loved. So those would be, weirdo books that people might come in that would not always be kept in stock. And so it was up to me to track the book down and order it for the person and then call them and say, "Hey, your book's here." And somebody came in one day and ordered this book called Psionic Power, which that book, his books were sometimes renamed in different printings.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm not sure if that book was originally called Psionic Power. And I think it might have actually been a sequel to Elementary Psionics. But anyway, um, this book came in, and I was about to call the person who ordered it, and I just started flipping through it, and I was like, I might read this before I call. So I ended up calling the customer, and then I ordered a copy for myself, and I was just hooked immediately. And I didn't know if I believed all of it, but I loved the concept of it.
Hmm.
And I've never been real big on building my own stuff.
Right.
I always prefer to have somebody make something for me. It reminds me of that quote by Groucho Marx: "I'd never want to be a member of the club that would have me as a member."
Yeah, yeah,
I
I remember
just,
that. Yeah, I use
I
that
kind of,
often.
like, I know what my strengths and weaknesses are, and I just don't feel like I'm that crafty, or I'm that good at actually constructing things. I can sit here and I can write a novel for you. I can tell you a great campfire story. I can compose a piece of music for you, but I just prefer not to sit down and make things like radionics boxes. And so I was actually in my early 20s, I guess, when I finally found a guy in California who was making them. And I bought one from him for, I think it was $300. And as soon as I got it, it was exciting. And, I guess the story I often tell is that the first thing I did was wish for my $300 back. I figured out that would be pretty clever, right? And within just a few days, I got a call from a big resort in the area saying that they wanted to hire me to come and do a little talk about local legends for 45 minutes, and the pay was $300. And I thought, well, isn't that an interesting synchronicity that the exact amount of money that I put on this machine has appeared, offered to me out of the blue, unexpectedly, a few days later.
Mhm.
And from there, I continued experimenting, and I realized that the more I took this seriously, the better and better and faster it worked. And now it's a part of my daily life. I know it's more than a part of your daily life. You practically live in a giant radionics box.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I have 100 plus machines around me almost every day. If I'm,
Wow, wow, that's
yeah,
impressive. And well, it's that's one of the things also is like traditionally, I mean, you use one machine for one wish at a time.
right.
And so, unless you're going to have a whole house that's got a room, that's just got 50 machines in it, I mean, you've got to kind of pick and choose what you're going to work on at any given time. And people sometimes they come to me and they say, Josh, well, just put this on your wishing machine. And I'm like, well, it's working on something else right now.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But you know, it's really an interesting thing, and really Chuck's break. I guess when it came to the radionics, it was his little side thing here was combining magic with
Mhm.
radionics. That was his big thing, and you know, and through happenstance, I met this guy by the name of J.S. Garrett, and he's a black magician, and I've told him in person, and I've even said on in public, my Christian beliefs do not really go along with what he does, but as a human being, I like the guy. He's a highly intelligent, personable guy. Would do anything in the world for me, and I just, he's just a good guy for me personally. To me personally, uh, but some of his practices I don't agree with, and I've made that clear to him, and it's no offense, and he doesn't take it personal, and I don't take it personal, but the reason why I built an association with him and a friendship with him, I kind of wanted to get a look at, okay, what's this magic thing all about? And why is this thing like the other side of the coin of radionics? I mean, it gives me. I've been doing. I've been meditating on this stuff for several years now, Josh. I mean, just trying to figure out what the connection is, and will this does this enhance this technology? Or does the technology enhance magic? I mean, what's going on here? And trying to see what would happen. And I have to admit, I've seen what these guys have done, and it's pretty phenomenal with the use of radionics. Do I agree with how they did it? No, but I am damn impressed by the results that they do get. I mean, it. So anyway, that's just again. I'm playing a scientist with these guys, and they real, and like I said, I consider them, for me personally, uh, you know, good friends. I mean, they're, for good of friends as you can have as a black magician, but the way these two technologies work. What is your opinion of magic and radionics? Do you feel that there's a correlation between the two? Do you feel like there's a connection, or is just a what do you think?
I believe that radionics is a form of magical practice. And that's because that magic is really about exacting one's will on the physical formation of reality.
Hmm.
And it's about the connection between matter and energy. It's about the connection between the unseen world and the seen world. This is why I love cymatics so much, in which you take this invisible tone or music or something that's vibrating, and then you just sprinkle little physical particles around it like sand, and all of a sudden the sand, almost magically, it snaps into these various forms.
Right.
And they're often like little snowflakes and such. And of course, for those who follow my work, you know that I took my interest in cymatics and then turned it into paracymatics, which is a method that I invented to take all these things together along with human intention and create magical sigils or symbols. And anybody who's interested in seeing what I'm talking about can go to thesigillab.com. Sigil is spelled S-I-G-I-L, thesigillab.com. And so to me, that's the purest form of magic, is taking some kind of an invisible force and using it to shape the physical world into some organized pattern. And so all magic is about perfecting that art. And we're talking about using tools that will help us focus our minds, because we live in a world that's full of distractions. Every single moment of every day is basically designed to distract you or brainwash you in some way. And it's never been as bad as it is now, I would imagine, because of the ubiquitous technology that we have all around us in our pockets. I mean, you're looking at a screen probably more than anything else during the day, a screen of some kind. And so it's hard to gather your thoughts and to focus them. And there are some people who they don't like wishing machines. They're tired of seeing something that has knobs and switches and lights. They prefer something like a magic wand,
Hmm.
or somebody would like something like a miraculous prayer board, and or somebody might use some kind of a special gemstone. These are all different tools, and it depends on what it is that connects with the way your mind works, that will help you focus it in order to learn to manifest things. So for example, anybody can sit down and hit keys on a piano, but not everybody sits down at the age of 5 like Mozart and starts composing little concertos and things. Some
Right.
people are more inclined to be able to take what they want and express it into the world. And the thing is, almost anybody can be taught to play something on the piano, even if it's played poorly. And so these radionic devices, they're instruments basically,
Hmm.
and anybody can use one. But learning how to use it means you have to pick the instrument, the kind of instrument that resonates with you, whether it's, some people like the guitar, some people like the flute, some people, whatever. Pick the type of instrument that resonates with you, and then start experimenting with it to see if it gives you the result that you're looking for. So that is to say, if you are using something like a wishing machine and it starts, to feel right and you start seeing results, well, then you just keep practicing with that. But it's all a form of magic. That's what, this whole process of manifestation is about. And that's why I believe that if you reach the stage of a true ascended master, almost a Christ-like figure, you would not require any kind of tools whatsoever. You would just be able to exert your mental power and literally turn water into wine, walk across the surface of the ocean, whatever you want to do.
Right.
I don't know if it's possible for human beings to attain that, because even if you believe in the existence of Jesus, well, he was not a normal human being.
No, yeah, he was an exception.
Yeah, his mom apparently was a virgin somehow. I don't know what got into her, but said it wasn't Joseph. And so that's why, the thing is, however, if you're going to start manifesting these things, there's always going to be an effect, and you have to make sure that you take the effect into full account. That's why, like when you and I've done some of our very successful weather experiments,
Uh-huh.
we have to realize that we live inside of a bubble here as far as weather is concerned. And you can't change the weather over here without there being a repercussion over there. And so you got to kind of balance out what you do. I mean, even, recently we worked on a big project to produce a lot of snowfall in the Rockies and the other mountains out west here to help with the drought. And it worked tremendously. They got historic numbers of snow, but also a lot of people died in floods in areas that didn't need that extra moisture. So, you know, you have to be very particular about um, understanding the implications of everything that you do. And that's why when you talk about like black magicians and people like that, in other words, people who are intentionally trying to harm another person. Well, look, um, there's no reason to sit here and say that there are no occasions in which somebody doesn't deserve to be harmed. Okay.
Agreed.
I believe very strongly in the Second Amendment, for example. And if somebody wants to test that by breaking into my house at night, then they're going to get harmed. Okay.
Same here.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so there are occasions when people they have put you into a position where you have to harm them. But you just have to always really believe that what you're doing is for a greater good, and it cannot be done for petty or vindictive purposes or just to get a paycheck or whatever. So that's why I think that to be on the safe side, you should always do everything you can to wish for any bad situation to be resolved positively, so that because there are ways that bad situations can be resolved without somebody having to get hurt. In fact, that's why that we even have a civilization to begin with, because 90% of the time we're able to work out problems without resorting to killing each other or hurting each other like we did in the Middle Ages or something. So that should be the goal every single time. And I'm not going to sit here and judge everybody who's a magician out there and tell them what's right or wrong for them, because it is a personal decision that you make and you will face the personal consequences. But as a general rule, if I have a problem, I try to solve it by looking at a positive solution. So that is, like, if I have a noisy neighbor and I don't like that neighbor, instead of me putting a curse on that neighbor, maybe I can try to wish that that neighbor finds a better place to live somewhere else. You know what I mean? There.
Speaking of, I'm going to tell you, I literally over the weekend, I got a text. I was in Florida, and I got a text from a gentleman out of Alaska that bought one of your machines. Well, no, let's put one of our machines. He bought a wishing machine, and he had emailed me asking about barking dogs in a neighborhood. He says it's like 24/7. They would not, whatever. And I did an animal, a thing with coyotes to basically have them leave a certain area. And I kind of went through the protocol for him. He tuned that machine, and he said within, I think it was like within 2 or 3 days, it was complete silence. He said something was missing. He didn't know what it was, but the dogs had been quiet. And this had happened in 7 days straight. This ha- it's incredible. It's incredible. And this guy, I'm just looking at how can you, by turning a few knobs, control animal behavior. And I'm always going around in a spiral with this stuff, Josh. And it's about. And I'm kind of shifting gears a little bit too. But before I leave here on the black magician thing, I'm going to give JS his credit or his due. A lot of things he does for people, it's basically the three motivations, most motivations of when people buy these wishing machines. And I'm just saying seeing this. It is number one is finances. Number two is relationships slash romantic relationships, and number three, it's a toss up between something that runs with wealth and, but we'll just say well-being and justice. And these are the kind of things that people, the four top things. If I was on Family Feud and I had to get the four top reasons why people buy these machines, these are it. And um, and these guys, that's what they're doing. Most of their clientele is the same way. But what I don't like about it is, and we'll leave this. I'm just going to close. One thing I don't like about it is, why are they having to deal? Why do they deal with demons when they can deal with angels? Why do they have to? Why are they dealing with the dark side when they can deal with the light side? And why do they kind of criss and cross? They'll go with the light side back to the dark side, and I find a little bit of, I don't know. It's a little. I think I would call it opportunistic. Or opportunist. I would say they're doing something there, but that's an argument for another day. But I find it interesting, the connection between magic and radionics, because I think the true magic is inside the brain, or what we call consciousness. That's the true magic. Now, the next thing, I wanted to talk to you about. I did a show with a gentleman. Matter of fact, we were on there several times, and we were talking about the Mandela effect. And I know, and I've heard your shows when you were doing your AM show or doing your radio show up in Asheville. That's how I used to. Speaking of strange, I used religiously. Hell, man, I was building machines listening to your show on Saturday night.
Yeah.
And you were talking about, what was the name that you gave this phenomena? And this is before anybody ever heard about the Mandela effect.
Yeah, well, going all the way back to basically when I was a kid, I had come across this concept. I can't say that I came up with the name. I might have, but it was basically considered the dead celebrities phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea was that you would swear that you had seen some news report that a celebrity was dead, and then a week later, they're alive, and that report never existed. And you're sitting there like, am I insane? Did I imagine that? And then you start talking to other people and you realize you're not the only one. And sometimes another person be like, I saw that too. I can't believe that, what happened there. And there's no record whatsoever of this. And what's funny is that that would make sense because that might happen all the time, or at least more frequently than we think. But we only notice it when it happens to involve a celebrity because they're celebrities and we pay attention to them. And if you start looking back throughout the history of this kind of thing, one of the best examples is the Thunderbird photograph from Tombstone, Arizona. And I believe this photograph was taken in 1840 that supposedly showed, and I'm not sure about the year, but it was somewhere in that period. It supposedly showed a bunch of these like old miner pioneer looking guys all lined up standing next to a barn holding this humongous Thunderbird. And it was printed, they say, in the local newspaper, which was the Tombstone Epitaph. And thousands and thousands of people over the years claimed that they had seen this photograph, and yet nobody could ever find it. And so some people became obsessed with this. There was one, I think his name was Mark Chorvinsky, was a man in like the 1980s 80s and 90s who really was looking. He went to the Library of Congress and he traveled all over the country and he interviewed all these people who said they'd seen it. John Kill said that he had seen it, and John Kill wrote the Mothman Prophecies. What makes it even weirder is that there was a very popular TV talk show in Canada. I think it was sometime in the 60s. And Ivan T. Sanderson, the well-known cryptozoologist, once appeared on this show. And at one point, as he was being interviewed, Johnny Carson style, he lifted up this little placard that had the Thunderbird photo on it. And all these people who were watching that show said that they saw it. Well, Mark Travinsky and other researchers, they went to the archive of that show, and there were hundreds of episodes of this show. Only one was missing, and it was that episode in which Ivan T. Sanderson supposedly held up this picture. So all of these people for decades have obsessed over trying to find the Thunderbird photo, and the best explanation a lot of people come up with is that existed at one point, and it just somehow doesn't exist anymore all at once for everybody.
Right.
And you start looking at the connection between that and the dead celebrities phenomenon, which I've experienced. We could probably see, I know you and I could sit here and I could be like, I remember when this guy supposedly was dead and he wasn't. I remember when this guy supposedly was dead and he wasn't. And then of course, that kind of thing. And I wrote about this in one of my books. That was published a long time ago. It was called Pet Ghosts: Animal Encounters from Beyond the Grave. And even though it's called Pet Ghosts, that was a name the publisher gave it. I never liked that because it was more about not just pets, but also just non-human apparitions. So I also got into cryptids like the Thunderbird and Mothman and Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster. And that's why I got into this story, because I was talking about the Thunderbird, and that led me to start writing about the dead celebrities phenomenon. So I've always been very interested in this, and I think there's a lot to it. And it takes me all the way up to the point where in another one of my books called The Secret Wisdom of Kukulkan, I speculated a possible explanation for this might be what I call the paratemporal loop hypothesis. And without going too deep into that, the idea is that the hypothesis is that if ever in the entire infinite future, some species is going to figure out how to travel back in time, then they're going to do it. And if they come back in time and they're able to influence what was happening to improve their own present in the future, they're going to do it. Okay. But then the problem is, well, if one species can figure it out, well, then that means eventually another species will figure it out. So how many of these future beings are traveling back in time and constantly adjusting things, little things that will somehow improve their status when they get back to the future? And they may not care whether or not it's Stouffer's stovetop stuffing or what, or I forget what was the other one. That if people don't know what I'm talking about, there's never been such a thing as Stouffer's stovetop stuffing.
Stuffing mix.
It was always some other company. I can't remember.
It was Kraft.
Was it Kraft? Okay, Kraft. So I'm not saying they came back and manipulated stovetop stuffing, but what I'm saying is that they changed something somewhere else that created a chain reaction, like the butterfly effect, as some would call it. That you get to see, you get to see the ripple from that sometimes in little things that you do come to contact with. And so this is a concept that's been out there in various forms, and at some point, I would imagine it wasn't that long ago. I'm going to say maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, somebody said that they noticed the dead celebrities phenomenon. They thought that Nelson Mandela was dead, and it turns out he wasn't. And so these people who were, and there is one particular talk show host, I don't want to use his name, who takes credit for popularizing this term. And I don't know if it was him or not, but somebody who had an audience started calling it the Mandela effect.
Oh yeah.
And that's the word that caught on for it. But really it has its roots that going all the way back to at least the Thunderbird photo. The dead celebrities phenomenon is what it was called when I came into contact with it long ago. And I've been publishing for over 30 years now. And also, this paratemporal loop hypothesis is a possible explanation. But what I think is weird is that because I don't automatically believe that everything that's claimed to be a Mandela effect is a Mandela effect, then some people are like, oh, well, he's a skeptic or he's a cynic, right, or he doesn't believe in it. And I the thing is, I do believe that something like this is happening, but just like with anything with the paranormal, you can go overboard with it. It's exactly like people who they point at every little piece of dust and they point their camera at the sun, and they get solar flares, and they say, "Look, I got a ghost! I got a ghost!" And if I tell them, "Well, no, that's a snowflake or whatever," I give my opinion. Some of them get angry at me.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's an overreaction to trying to keep things within realistic bounds. So I do believe that there is something that is most conveniently called the Mandela effect now, but I really don't know that everything that is, out there called the Mandela effect is inexplicable.
Okay. Yeah. I heard a good one the other day. Okay. What do you remember? The Smithsonian blank, the big museum out in D.C. The
Yeah,
Smith.
I've been there numerous times. So let's
What,
see. I would call it the Smithsonian Institute.
in this reality, it is now the Smithsonian Institution, and
Is
always
it?
been the institution.
Okay,
I
well,
remember
that's a good
the
one.
institute also. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a recent one. I don't know when the hell that happened,
yeah,
but yeah, all this stuff has changed. People think, what the hell does this have to do with radionics? Well, it's real simple. What this proves is that reality is fluid, that
right.
it can be changed, and to simplify things, radionics, you're 100% correct. That's what I tell everybody. It's a tool, but it's a tool that can be used to hack into reality, to bend it, to twist it a little bit, to make it do the things you want it to do. I'm an old timer, so I remember the old pinball machines. And when you play pinball and you shake that pinball machine too much, you get a tilt. But if you do it just right, you lose the ball. But if you do it just right, that ball will go where you want it to go. You can take your flippers and get that extra 100 points or whatever it is. The point of it is, it's able to do that. It's able to shake that pinball machine. It's able to make things happen that normally would not happen. Kind of getting back to the Apex machine, I did a trial run on that machine. What I did, it was a mutual friend of ours that lives out in the southwestern United States, and she was at the last conference, and just one heck of a human being, just a darn fine woman. And anyway, I owed her a big favor, and what I did was I built 3 or 4 of those Apex machines, and I wanted to trial run. I wanted her to test run these machines because she owns a lot of a lot of the wishing machines, and I wanted to give her something special because she really did a really kind thing for me. And so I gave her an Apex machine as a gift. And here's what she told me, and I even forwarded the text to you. She said, when she go to the casino, the local where she was located, she never win anything. She tuned the machine, the Apex machine, to win. And I'm just saying, this is what happened to her. And she said for the first time she won $700, and then the second time she won like $200 or $300. And she said, this has never happened to me. I've always lost. I've never won. I always play as for fun or whatever. But it made a difference in her life, and she correlates that to the machine. And matter of fact, that very same person did some work on weather out there in the middle of the desert over near New Mexico and Arizona, and it was phenomenal. They said it was the most rain they ever had in like the last 131 years, and that was last year. That was back in 22. I'm on, and the common denominator is the tools, and of course, I live, breathe, and sleep radionics. That's my calling. That's all I do. But that that technology has done more for my life personally. The people that I know, the opportunities that have been laid in front of me, they never would have happened if it had not been for radionics. It was a life changer, a life changer. And
Well,
I mean, go ahead, please.
yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to tell you that one thing that is really intriguing, because you and I talk quite often about the impact that it's made on our lives. And
Right.
by the way, let me just point out that even though you and I have known each other all these years, we've worked on all these different projects together. We've traveled to various places like Puerto Rico, and obviously you've come out here to Las Vegas, and did our thing up there in Milwaukee. Um, I think this is the only time that you and I have ever actually sat down one on one on camera and had a conversation like this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
if
this.
you if you want to go another 30 minutes, that's fine. We better take advantage of this while we got it.
Oh yeah, because I know you're a busy camper, there, guy. Hey,
Yeah,
hey, I'm the poor bastards having to build, fulfill all these
I
orders
know.
you got.
Yeah.
I tell you, it's
And
go ahead,
here's the story I want to fit in here though.
please go ahead. I'm gonna
Yeah, so but I was just
step
going to let
back.
you know that because you'd asked me in the beginning if how long I could go, and so yeah, we can do another half hour.
Sure.
Um, by the way, the website that you and I created all those years ago for the things that you can only get out of our brains is wishingmachineproject.com. Wishingmachineproject.com. Now I know that you have your other website where you have other things available, but the
Right,
things you and I specifically have worked on is wishingmachineproject.com.
right.
And if you want to go just straight to the Apex machine, you can just go to theapexmachine.com, and that's APEX, theapexmachine.com, and there you'll see even more information about it. And there, I've got an audio clip there that's about 30 minutes where I talked also about what we were doing to create this. Hard to believe it only came out around 4 months ago.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's already taken on a life of its own. But this story is worth repeating because when it comes to how radionics can change your life, um, I think that there's something very, very personalized about your machine. It almost becomes an extension of who you are in a very positive way. And I tell people sometimes, like, it reminds me perhaps of like your cell phone. Like right now, I don't know where my cell phone is, and I can sense that. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like I know I have an appendage, but I don't know where it is. That's how sensitive you get to your cell phone. It
Right.
becomes an extension of your body. So when the day arrived, when I finally received my Apex machine in the mail from you, this is one of those great things about doing what we do. As you get older, as an adult, it is more and more difficult to be excited about things. As a matter of fact, you have a tendency to expect disappointment. It's like when a movie comes out, you're like, I know this is going to suck, but I've seen all the other Indiana Jones movies. So,
Might as
so
well. Yeah.
yeah. So, but it's exciting when you get one of these. I don't care who you are, how old you are. It's exciting when you get one of these, and you're like, "Oh, now what do I want to wish for? And some people know in advance, and some people don't. Sometimes I think to myself, you know, things are going well right now, and maybe I don't want to change anything for a while. But when I got this, I needed to test it out, and I needed to do something just so I could see if it seemed to be working like I think it is, because I proclaim that, in my opinion, this is the fastest manifesting wishing machine in the world. That's my opinion. Now, I sat around for like the first evening I had it, and I was trying to figure out like what do I wish for? Because I didn't really have anything that and I didn't want to do something crazy like, oh, I need $1 million. Let's see if $1 million pops up tomorrow. I wanted it to just be something that's even quirkier and weirder than that. And I don't know why this popped into my head, but look, I don't either like nor dislike clowns, but I don't see clowns every day. I don't live on the Vegas Strip. I mean, it's just not a part of my life. I don't have any like clown dolls or pictures of clowns. Maybe this popped into my head because George Norrie doesn't like clowns. I don't know. But I just thought to myself, well, that's something at least I'll notice. So I just plugged in, tomorrow I want to see a clown. Just something simple like that. Put it away, forgot the machine. The next day, I literally, when I woke up and started my day, I was not thinking about what I'd put on the machine. I had more immediate stuff happening. And so I sat down at one point to have a snack in front of my TV, and I turned to this channel that I just never turned to. I don't remember if it was like channel 300 or something like that, but I don't know what compelled me to do that, because I have my list of channels that I like, just like everybody else. But I turned to that channel, and here is this movie Patch Adams, starring Robin Williams, that was filmed in the late 90s. And as I'm watching this movie, all of a sudden, he puts on this clown nose and these big floppy shoes and a funny hat. And the whole movie is a true story. It's a biopic about this man who was a doctor, like a pediatrician, who starts to dress up like a clown and to entertain kids, like kids who have cancer, because he believes in that whole, laughter is the best medicine kind of adage. And he became so famous for this that he actually created this whole like troupe of clowns that would travel out all over the world and help sick kids. And as I'm sitting there watching this, I get all these goosebumps because this is not just me happening to turn on a Robin Williams clown movie. I was in that movie. I worked on that movie. It was filmed in Asheville, North Carolina, and I got a job for about a week as a featured extra. And for 3 of those days, I got to hang out with Robin Williams, have lunch with him, and I am even in that movie on screen for like 2 seconds in a shot with Robin Williams. He's walking down the hallway, and you can see me walking down this hallway right behind him. So I'm on screen with one of the greatest movie legends of all time. And the reason this gave me goosebumps is because I thought to myself, not only did I get a clown today, but this was a clown that came in a very unexpected way that I would have never thought of, and that had a deeply personal connection to me because I enjoyed hanging out with Robin Williams so much that when he died, I cried. And so that was when I realized not only is this thing, because it was, it probably took it like, I don't know, 12 hours to manifest that for me. And then from there, I just went hog wild, and I've just been manifesting all kinds of stuff, and and everything is working out, everything is coming true. And I don't ever tell people that I promote medical issues and cures and therapies and all that, because I'm not a doctor and I'm not qualified to do that, and it would be illegal for me to do that. But what I can tell you is that I've used it for every type of problem that I've had in my life, and it has helped tremendously. And that is why that it's very exciting to be able to put this out there. And this is, I think, going back to what you were saying, even though it's a long-winded way, that there's a very personalized connection that comes with using these devices. It's not like you hit a switch and the universe just feeds you something. Something happens in your life in a way that you cannot expect that brings to you what you want or something better.
You just nailed it. And that's what I always tell people. I tell them, wish for this or something better. And when you do that, you have opened up the universe of possibilities.
Yeah.
You may not get exactly what you were looking for, but you may get something, like you said, something totally out of left field that was infinitely better than what you originally were hoping to get, or a circumstance. And and just like I have a lot of faith in the universe now, more than I used to, because I realized either I'm getting um, either the universe is getting a hell of a lot brighter or I'm getting a hell of a lot dumber. But I think that the universe actually, but it will work off your intent, and that's another thing too. I wanted to kind of delve into that I've talked about many times. I like to hear your take on this too. Um, Intention is, I think, a lot of what's required to do these things. I'm gonna, a lot of times now, I guess I'm getting lazy, but a lot of times when I tune a machine, I don't even put anything on it. I just visualize what it is I'm trying to accomplish, and I tune the machine accordingly. And I get the sticks, I go through everything, and I set it aside. It doesn't make any difference. But then again, I wonder, are those witness, they call witness samples, are those witness samples there to connect your mind to build confidence so that you feel like you actually have a physical connection to whatever's going on with that between the um, the target and whatever it is that you're trying to change with that target. And I kind of look at it as sort of like a psychological thing. It's like a visual cue for people when they actually put a physical thing on a machine. And the thing about it, I don't know why, but if you're able to focus, and this gets back to what you said as a mind machine, when you're able to focus and see the picture of what it is you're trying to do, and you tune the machine, um, I'm just being honest. I'm able to still get results. It's the damnest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I often do the same thing, especially if I'm in a hurry. Like,
Exactly.
you're going out the door and you need something fast.
Right.
I do prefer still to put something on the input plate, and I think it's because of it's like if I gave you the name of a painting that maybe you've never seen, like Whistler's Mother. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but
Right.
if I say the Mona Lisa, well, boom, like instantly this triggers a different part of the brain. Because if you'd never seen the Mona Lisa, that name wouldn't mean anything to you. But having something there that triggers the visual part of the brain, I think it juices it up a little bit more. It energizes what you're doing. Um, but I've also often thought that, a lot of when it comes to magic in general, a lot of people have popularized this idea that it's about intention, intention, intention. And I don't think that that is necessarily as important as they make it out to be. I think it has more to do with perception and perspective. So especially perception. Let me explain what I mean by that. Um, when you open up, say, a book of optical illusions and you see a drawing that's sitting there and it looks like it's spinning, but it's not. It doesn't matter that you know that it's not spinning. It still looks like it's spinning because that's the way that your eyes are forced to perceive it. And there's nothing you can do about it. It's a biological part of your wiring there. And so one of the things that's great about magic is that you don't always have to believe it's going to happen. You just need to find things that somehow force your mind into seeing it happen, to feeling that it's going to happen, even if you don't believe it. And that's why sometimes you can make things happen that you don't intend just because that you visualize it happening. you know,
Yeah.
you
Right.
can like jinx I guess that's what jinxing is kind of.
Right.
You're like, I don't want to think about this, because I don't want to think about something good happening because something bad's going to happen, and all. We do this to ourselves. Um, and so there are times when I'll sit down and I'll just print something off of the internet that represents what I want, or I will just take a piece of paper and write what I want. Since I'm a professional writer, I mean, I've got a better than the average person's imagination. And so if I just put down a few key words, sometimes those words function just like a drawing to me.
Yeah. I understand exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, plus when you've tuned, when you've done a tuning of, thousands and thousands and thousands of times over a 10-year period, I guess it's kind of like, somebody that just knows how to play the piano and somebody who, like you said, a Mozart. He just hits the keys. He knows how to make a note. He knows the flow, the rhythm, the whole 9 yards, and it's just a natural. But then again, some of us we have to practice for 75 years. Um, and another thing too, I guess, as we kind of wrap up here, a thing that I've always talked about or spoke about on a lot of these shows as to why I feel that radionics works is the double slit experiment. And even how I found out about that was a result of tuning a machine. And because I, it kind of goes back to that reality thing. And the way I understand this, and you corrected me on how to say this, and I appreciate it. and the way I perceive this, and please correct me, when matter is not observed or measured, it behaves like energy. But when it is observed or measured, it goes back to behaving like matter again. Is that correct? Have I?
No, that's not quite technically accurate. It's a reasonable way of explaining the point. But in the actual double slit experiment, what they were doing was firing photons of energy through two slits. And they found that the photons of energy would behave like a particle or a wave based upon whether or not it was being observed. So when it wasn't being observed, it would behave as, or would tend to behave as a wave. But when it was being observed, it would tend to behave as a particle. So there was still a transition happening there based upon whether or not something was being observed, which is the point you're making. But it's not quite accurate to say that it's matter or energy. It's actually just the form the energy takes. Is it going to take the form of a wave or the form of a particle? And you could say that a form of a particle is easier to visualize as a form of matter, but it's really about the distinction between behaving as a particle and behaving as a wave.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying. It behaves like energy. In other words, it's behaving like a wave. It's not. It's we both know it's a particle, but it's behaving like a wave. And that's how I see it. That's how I visualize it in my in my brain here. But the the point of this is that I kind of came to a conclusion. So how can turning a few knobs, or how does this radionic stuff work? And I think part of the key is that is that what we've done here, when you tune that machine, and I think you kind of delved into this yourself with some of the additions we have for the Apex machine. When when the human body gives off an energy field, I mean, some people can see it as or whatever. It gives off an energy field, and I always had this conversation. I even talked to a neurologist about this. Where does consciousness reside? And there's a method. There's the reason why I'm going this way. Where does consciousness reside? And I said, is in the brain, and they said, I don't know. I think it's in the. I think it's outside the body. And even we're talking. I'm talking about surgeons, people who actually perform brain surgery. This is what they're
Mhm.
telling me. They think I'm not 100% convinced that consciousness resides in that little sack of cholesterol between your ears. And okay, now with that being said, if consciousness is part of that energy field, and when you're tuning that knob, and when you're stroking that stick plate, and when you're projecting your intent into that machine, the circuit is picking up on that stuff. And that's what's tuning the machine. When you finally tune it, it's intermingling. It's interfacing with you. It's a physical interface between your mind and the outside world. It's just an extension. But when you tune that thing and you let it go, it becomes a part of you. It's working 24/7. It is observing the world. It is measuring, and what it is doing, as in that double slit experiment, it is becoming an observer, and it goes back to the observer effect. And because it is observing 24/7 on a particular thing that needs to happen or that you want to happen, that's what reality does. That's what the universe does. It bends to that. It will take that pinball machine and shake it just a little bit so it can make that ball go in the right place to get that right reaction that you're looking for. That's
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
agree. I agree. I think that you and I have done this long enough now that that seems to be the most streamlined conclusion that we can come up with, because it goes back to what I was saying about your cell phone sort of feeling like an extension of you, and you can tell when you lay it down where it is, or if you don't know where it is. And that's why I believe that these devices, they are a true form of technology. Even if they happen to be the world's best placebos, fine. If they work, they work. I have no problem supplying the world's best placebos, but I do believe it's a technology. I think it has a lot to do with the crystals that are inside. And we know that crystals can be imprinted. We know that they hold information. We use them for technology every day. And I tend to think that, like you just said, when you form a relationship with this box, so to speak, and you program it, then it's just acting as an extension of this electrodynamic machine, which is the brain and the human body. Now, the ultimate consciousness is likely stored in the cloud, as we would say these days. If you tried to
Right.
explain that to somebody 50 years ago, they would have no idea what you were talking about.
Right.
But now we have a model for this. We know what it's like when you put something on the cloud, meaning that I can destroy my computer and it's the information's not lost because it's been actually stored or backed up somewhere else in the cloud. It almost reminds you of these concepts of the Akashic record or the ether. And so I tend to believe that, yes, you are a physical representation of information, but that, and you're an information pattern. You're like a printout, but just because you destroy the piece of paper that was printed out doesn't mean it destroyed the image that was used to print the paper. So your personality, your consciousness, I envision, is definitely somewhere else. It's easy to point up, but I don't know if it's up or down or if it's another a parallel dimension, whatever, wherever it is.
Right.
There is the cloud where you're stored, and I believe your brain acts as a kind of antenna and interpreter of that information, which is why that, if I come up to you and I cut your arm off, I mean, you're going to feel it and you're going to scream, but it's not going to change your personality. I come up and hit you in the head with a hammer, well, you might not be the same guy after that. So
Right.
there's something special about how the brain interprets the flow of that information through what I call the wormhole brain, which I wrote about in my Kukulkan book. But once that information comes down and is filtered through your brain, well, then why does it have to stop there? Why can't you perhaps control that and direct it into other places, which might be how that, certain objects gain a reputation for being spiritually possessed or charmed or lucky or unlucky. This type of, they become extensions of this energy. And because that a radionics machine not only has these crystals that can store that aspect of intention, but also it's got moving parts. It's got knobs that you can use to tune and get very specific with. It's a very useful way of putting your hands around this thing that you want to accomplish and working with it. Almost like taking clay to form a golem or some kind of a tulpa that you're putting out there. You
Right.
can work with one of these machines with your hands if you want. And then, yeah, it's sitting there as an extension of you. And then you can go off and you can have your popcorn and movie or, go to the gym or whatever and let the machine sit there and keep working on your goal for you. And that's probably, whether that's how it works or not, it sure seems that way, doesn't it, Brad?
Yes, yes, it does. I like to give the other example or analogy that, yeah, you can walk to the store or you can get in your car and drive to the store. The end result is going to be the same. One's just faster, more efficient, and easier than the other. It's a
Yep.
tool. The car's a tool, just like these devices. They're tools. And I tell you, it's phenomenal what's going on here. And the thing about it is, the more I get involved in this stuff, the more I look into it. Uh, you know, and this is another thing too. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to be egotistical about this or say something that being arrogant or whatever. But I think you and I together have done more to promote the radionics and psionic technologies than anybody else. I think we've done more. We've talked more. You've done more, and that's where that was the partnership. You were the marketing guy. You were the guy that gets out there and promotes it and gets the word out. And I'm the guy that builds the machines. And you've done more to promote this technology than I think anybody could have done. Yes, there are a lot of people out there that came up with the great ideas that we work with to build these devices, but when it came to actually bringing the information to the general public and getting people informed about what is available, I think I think there's nobody second best in what you've done.
Well, thank you for saying that. And, I had the benefit of technology with me because, I was able to use my platform on talk radio as well as the internet to start educating people on what this is. And before that point in time, unless you came across some book, some
Right.
obscure
It's
book,
the
or you joined
Barnes
some kind of,
Nope down in Asheville.
yeah,
Yeah.
some kind of odd club, you're not going to probably encounter this stuff. And so I always, one of the things that I struggled with was how do I come up with metaphors and analogies and stuff that will make more sense. And a lot of the language that you and I use now when we're talking to people came from just trial and error and kind of hammering it out over the years and figuring out how to describe things in a way that you can relate to that makes sense. And I think that's why it's really taken off. But when it comes to your role in all this, I mean, for one thing, I remember when you first told me that you were interested in making these things and making them available. And I thought, okay, cool. Like 3 times a year, maybe somebody will say, where do I get one of those? And I'll say, well, Brad will possibly make you one. And for this to turn into a 10-year plus business, basically, that has cranked out thousands of these things, uh, is beyond what either one of us imagined. I have seen you work yourself to the point where you have a brace on your wrist as you
Yeah.
are
Yeah. The
putting these
carpal
things together.
tunnel. Yeah. Yeah.
And not only have you done such a phenomenal job, which is why that, like, if everybody got one of these and wanted their money back, that'd be a pretty lousy business, right? So
Right.
not only do these things work so well for people, and not only do we get all these grateful emails constantly from people saying thank you, and telling us all these success stories, but I feel like that there's no question that you have personally made more of these machines than anybody else in history. And that is why you and I have talked before about this really odd concept that makes sense. Um, since you were the central hands-on figure and like you touched every single one of these machines, and so even if
Right.
you had an assistant helping you in some cases, I mean, your hands were involved. Is it possible that all these, if one machine is an extension of a person's brain, is it
Right.
possible that all of these thousands of machines that you've made are all somehow interconnected by some web, and you have created some gigantic brain of some kind, of like a radionic brain, and these are all synapses, and that every single time you make a new machine, every other machine gets stronger and stronger and stronger as you create this huge, sinister, super villain, neurological monstrosity all over the globe. Have you? How do you feel about your role in putting something like that around the planet?
It's good to be a part of the Borg.
Yeah, basically.
No, I actually I talked about that I guess about a week or so with another gentleman who goes by the name of Joshua too. He's a headhunter for a major IT company, but the guy really knows people. He studies people. That's his job. He has to be able to pick the right person for the job and make sure he's not dealing with a total loser. He has to separate the wheat from the chaff, and that's what I was telling him. And he's like us. He thinks the way we do. And he said, this thing you've created a giant network. It's a neural network. And he said the same damn thing you said. It said this is basically it's on every continent on the face of the planet except for Antarctica. I'm working on Antarctica, and
Yeah.
anybody out there, if you have a mailing address to somebody that will accept this package, they don't have to open it up. They don't have to do anything. Just put it somewhere safe inside of Antarctica. If you could do that for me, I'd be a happy camper. I would. I would have. That's on my bucket list.
Just mail it to the Antarctica post office and tell them this is yours to keep at the post office.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. but I don't know how that's done. I don't know what the protocol is, but if anybody, if there's anybody out there that wants to lend a helping hand on how to make this happen, I'm all ears. But
Yeah.
anyway, well, I tell you, how long have we been doing this, Josh? Oh shoot, man, we've been on here for like an hour and a half. I tell you what, before we close here, is there anything you want to promote or anything you want to talk about? I mean, the floor is yours,
Well,
please.
thank you. Yeah, again, wishymachineproject.com is where you go to see all the different devices that Brad and I have worked together, including the Use the Force box, which we
Oh, that's
we
awesome.
made
Yeah.
when my book Use the Force came out. I've actually got a copy of it right here. It's got a bunch of Kleenexes. Those are my fast and easy bookmarks for things I talk about on the radio. Use the Force, A Jedi's Guide to the Law of Attraction. I consider this book to be a handbook for any kind of manifestation work. And if you go to my website, joshuapwarren.com, you can read this book for free online. You don't have to sign up for anything or anything like that. You'll see the book cover there. You can click it, and you can read it as a PDF in both English and Spanish. While you're there at the website, I hope that you'll go to my curiosity shop, where you will find all kinds of unusual metaphysical inventions, things you won't find anywhere else in the world. And because, the thing is, even though despite what I said about me not liking to be like the crafts person who sits down, I'm always coming up with stuff. And my wife, she loves to craft things together, and so she helps me a lot. And sometimes I hire other people to work on projects and build things for me, and so I have all kinds of unusual items in my curiosity shop, including a link to the Sigil Lab. But if you want to stay updated on everything that is happening in my bizarre world, my phantasmagoria, whether it's regarding work with Dr. Mulder and radionics or sigils or magic or experiments that you can participate in. Sometimes I just do free giveaways. Sometimes I just give away money because it's good karma. I do all kinds of things like that. The number one thing I'd like for everybody to do is to sign up for my free e-newsletter. So there's no period after the P. If you go to joshuapwarren.com, and right there on the homepage, it'll say, click here for Joshua's free e-newsletter. When you sign up for that e-newsletter, you will instantly receive an automated email from me with links to all kinds of free stuff that you can start doing in order to start manifesting, to start learning how to do this, how to do it better. And it's going to make your life more magical almost instantly. So be sure to sign up for that, and you can stay updated. And who knows what Dr. Mulder and I have coming up next. I don't know how much you want to say, but I've heard through the grapevine you're going to be manifesting some UFOs in the near future, perhaps.
Oh, jeez, man. Yeah, you'd wait till the end of the show to bring this up. Yeah, what's going on here? Burnsville, North Carolina. I'm going to have the link in the description box. But I have been asked to see if I can make a UFO manifest in wonderful Burnsville, North Carolina. Oh, geez, I think it's like September the 15th, and I think at 5:30 in the evening. I'm like looking at this, Josh. You and I worked together, Arecibo project. Then we had that project over there at Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Uh, you know, uh, and I think even what was it? Who was there? The guy that the paranormal Dave Schrader. Dave Schrader
Mm-hmm.
was there, I believe. And I'm going to tell you, you know, to, I thought the first time was capturing lightning in the bottle, but the second time you were there. Did people actually see a UFO in the sky in
Oh
Sioux City?
yeah. Oh yeah. There were people who even came up to me afterward and said, "Did you put a balloon or something up there?" Yeah. And because I guess that what they saw was so distinct that they thought maybe I'd had somebody drive down the road and put a glow stick on a balloon or something like that.
Right.
So I didn't see the UFO, but I was busy talking to everybody. I wasn't looking up at the sky.
Right.
But I mean, dozens of people saw the UFO. That night was really interesting. We were at a conference, and so there were a lot of big names there. Josh Gates was there, and John E.L. Tenney was there, and gosh, I can't remember all the people who Jeff Belanger, a lot of people who pop up on the paranormal talk circuit. We were all there for this conference, and so the buzz had been throughout the whole conference that on this night at this time we're all going to gather outside of the Keewatin Casino, and we're going to try to make this thing manifest. And boy, everybody started freaking out, and they saw, well, there's video
I saw
footage of
the
it
video.
on
Yeah.
YouTube. Yeah, so no, it's real. Now, of course, what we did in Puerto Rico was I think that was absolutely historic, because what we got in Puerto Rico was well, we captured this UFO on camera, excuse me, during broad daylight,
Right.
and it shot straight up into the sky and created this big squealing noise. And I mean, it was all this interference, and I mean, like, that was just insane. And when I did that experiment, I didn't talk as much about the radionics aspect of it, because that I thought that'd be a bit much. I'm already trying to like explain this concept of how we're trying to conjure up a UFO using
Right.
ham radio signals and all this stuff. That's
Right.
weird enough. If I add one more weird thing onto it, well, now it's just like people are going
Over
to
the
totally
top.
lose
Yeah.
focus on. But yeah, those are two occasions in which we obviously, well, I would say you never know for certain what the cause and effect is, but I think it's pretty ironic that both times that you and I have decided to do this, UFOs have been seen. So I'm very excited to see what's going to happen here in Burnsville. I think they're going to see a UFO.
Oh man. Yeah. And another thing too, I think somebody's wanting to do a radionics conference, and believe it, it's in Johnson City, Tennessee, and I don't have a date yet on that one, but they want to concentrate on radionics. This is going to be one of the things. And another thing too, because of all this cryptozoology stuff, I got people out there asking me to build a Bigfoot box,
Hmm.
to build a box, a machine to use it to manifest cryptid, cryptid activity.
Right.
And I'm open-minded about that. I don't discount it. Hell, I believe in the Mandela effect. I mean, geez, how strange that can that be? So I don't. When people say that, that these things exist, I will not discount it. I will not. I'm very open-minded with the stuff because I've been there, done that, and so, but you know, I'm anxious to see how I can do this with these Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever this is. I've heard they're interdimensional, and I've all kinds of things. But but because of the results I've had using radionics with animal behavior, I'm thinking if these things are primates. I mean, hell, you probably know more about this stuff than I'll ever learn. You've probably forgotten already. I mean, if these things are a primate or something along that line, what do you think, with the results I've had dealing with other mammals, what do you think the chances are that this could possibly make a difference or possibly cause an effect with
Oh, I think it will. I think it definitely will, because when it comes to, well, let's just say cryptids in general.
right,
A cryptid is an animal that may or may not exist. And you have a lot of people out there who believe that Bigfoot and similar creatures like the chupacabra or Mothman are strict, kind of physically normal biological creatures that simply have not been captured yet. I mean, like, for example, I think the mountain gorilla was considered to be a cryptid up until something like the late 1800s or something crazy like that. There were stories about such a thing. They didn't even discover, scientists didn't even acknowledge dinosaur bones until the 1800s.
mm,
And so I do realize that there are examples of that. But the problem with Bigfoot is that we're talking about this creature being reported in virtually every single one of the 50 states. every single year that's supposed to be 7 to 8 feet tall and maybe weighs 800 to 1,000 pounds, and it's covered in shaggy fur. And if that were the case, there would be more fur, there would be more scat, there would be more of an impact on the ecology if this were a normal physical being. And yet, I don't think that all these people who say they have encountered Bigfoot are lying or have a big imagination. So the only way I can reconcile that is to say that Bigfoot must exist as some kind of an interdimensional being, that people see this creature and they experience it, but then it disappears because that it's not always a part of the physical world like a gorilla is, or some kind of typical ape or a form of human being. And I think that is a good explanation for a lot of these cryptid sightings, because there's absolutely nothing within what we consider the scientific literature to indicate that life must exist exclusively at this particular frequency, which we consider the physical realm. And so there may be forms of life that exist in what is a non-physical realm, and there may be some boundary there where sometimes either these creatures can intentionally cross over, or maybe it accidentally happens due to cosmic weather or something like that. We're not sure what all the variables are here, but the thing is, what you're able to manipulate with the radionic device, at very least, is human perception. And so even if you create a tulpa,
Yeah.
or you make some kind of a psychological event happen in which people observe this thing, it's still noteworthy. It doesn't explain the, perhaps the inherent, I guess they would say, ontological, ontological, the ontology of it or something like that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't explain all that. But at the same time, if you give people that experience, then that's all they're going to really take away at the end of the day. So I think you're going to be able to produce an effect with just about any of these perhaps interdimensional creatures.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the next thing on the agenda, and I enjoy this. And like I said, I built. Hell, man, I'm gonna after I get off this thing with you, I got more radionic stuff I got to build tonight, and I mean it's just constantly, it's just a part of my life. I don't know why, it just is, uh, but yeah, I'm always trying to stretch the boundaries here. Yes, helping people get jobs and whatever, but I like that. I like the far out stuff too. The woo woo stuff. I like to kind of dabble in that a little bit too, just to kind of keep things entertaining. And it has been so far. I've definitely met some interesting individuals in this world. So, but anyway, Josh, I know you're worn out here, and I do appreciate your time on this. And thank you for coming on the air with me. I mean, this really meant a lot, and I'm glad that we were able to kind of give people out there a little bit of the inside baseball of how this relationship between Joshua P. Warren and Dr. Mulder began, and it just like led from to where it is today. And like I said, the work we've done, I just think it's been absolutely phenomenal. So, all right, my friend. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to press stop on the recording. And if you don't mind staying on the air just for a minute, I appreciate it. Okay.
Then thank you so much for all of your years of friendship and your hard work. It's been a wonderful experience, and I look forward to our future.
Oh, yeah. And like I said, hell, it's always constantly growing. We're always going to the next level. And that's what I love about this. We're always doing some weird, people. This guy has gotten me to do some weird, crazy shit. I'm just telling you, this man is just hilarious. And I always kid around, and it was a wonderful wife, a beautiful wife, Lauren. I always kid around with her. I said, one thing about Joshua P. Warren, when you're around him, you are never bored. You are never bored. So, all right, my friend. Well, anyway, on that note, you have a good evening.
Okay, thanks. You too.